In this video, I'm going to be going over the game between Team Reciprocity and Spacestation Gaming, held on Playday number 3 on Kafe. To start, Spacestation will ban Ash, and while they will let on in the interview that the motive is a target ban against Nyx, who is very effective on Ash, given that the defenders brought Castle 6 rounds for Spacestation Gaming, I believe it's actually a lot more strategic than Spacestation are letting on. Ash being one of the few operators who from afar can remove those armor panels. Thatcher is the next ban. He makes attacking Kafe quite difficult. It forces attackers to lean heavier on Maverick in order to breach into walls. Maestro being their somewhat counter ban to their own ban, since Thatcher does disable Evil Eyes. And then Spacestation will ban Cades because they want none of the Thatcher ban to influence the way that they attack onto site. So that Thatcher ban, extremely relevant because Thatcher is a counter to Maestro and also Cade, but when he's removed, this makes the power of Maestro stronger and the strength of Cade stronger. In order to reduce both of those, what do? They ban both. In the past, I've covered G2's sledge ban on Kafe, where G2 relied heavily on the Mute and Castle combo. And this is going to be somewhat of a mirror to that. I've also seen Dark Zero and Team Reciprocity during the Invitationals do a lot of Castle strategies on Kafe. And SSG have fully adopted this. The Mute and Castle combo is very powerful because it means that there's only a handful of operators capable of removing those armor panels. That is Ash, who's now banned, Zoff, who Team Reciprocity aren't bringing, Maverick, and Sledge, as well as any nades, but not breaching charges because the Mute jammers disable the breaching charges from being able to detonate. So this combo is very powerful. Team Reciprocity do have the operators to deal with it in the Sledge and Maverick, but removing this castle barricade will be somewhat difficult given the fact that Jaeger exists and they don't have a projectile lethal piece of utility other than grenades, which you would really rather use on a player than on utility. Then Team Reciprocity brings Capitao, just very strong. IQ, who's not going to get really any mileage here because what's she going to shoot? An ADS and maybe a jammer underneath, but I don't think that's in their plan to do so. As well as Nock, who is obviously, again, not very effective because of the lack of intel that SSG are bringing. Really, the only thing that you'll lean on with the Nock here is the fact that her footsteps will be silent. And then from Spacestation, we have the Doc. This is, I guess, somewhat of a substitute for Echo because they like deployable cameras more, or maybe they just want to give faults the coined fragger between the ACOG operators. On the third floor, there will be the 2 default reinforcements on top of red. This is to make entry into the default take, if you will, through Cigar Lounge and then breaching in through Freezer, all the more difficult. You could also argue that there's really no better place than to put these 2 reinforcements because it makes this hatch drop on the red stairs choke point, since there's only one doorway to really progress through, or you go back downstairs. There's no rappel back up. And then accompanied with that, which we're going to feature right now, is the armor panels on piano. So there's going to be this armor panel into Cigar Shop from piano, the one on the window paired with a Mute jammer on red wall. And then we will also have a armor panel on the piano window. These are all there in order to give a player the ability to play within Cigar Lounge or piano, as well as to make the entry into this entire zone all the more difficult and really to slow down the push. And this is compounded with the fact that there will be a deployable shield in Cigar Shop with a smoke playing behind it that will be gassing off red stairs just to slow down the push even more and to make that drop even more dangerous. I also want to let you know that there will be the castle playing in piano, whose responsibility is to jump out of the windows in order to contest anyone who's trying to remove this armor panel. What's more is Rampy will eventually run out of this window in Small Bakery in order to contest the exact same player trying to use that window in order to progress the push into Cigar Lounge. So as you can see, a big focus of the strategy here is holding down red stairs through piano and also cigar shop. Then reinforcements on washroom. There's going to be a rotation here that allows a player to move between freezer and backstore. This isn't really all that different from what you would normally see. And so the idea, or I should really say 5 reinforcements. The idea is that you give a player mobility to pass through pixel spot, white hallway, washroom, freezer, and then also this is accompanied with a reinforcement on stacks, or what I call stacks, and then a rotation there as well. So again, you have this fluidity throughout site where you can move depending on what is needed. And in ranked, normally people board this wall off. That doesn't give you that flexibility. The importance here is, so why do you have this rotation to washroom? The reason is the player in Cigar Lounge can move through pixel and then retreat back into that position, but also he can get support from a player in freezer who can come out and peek into the pixel spot and support in that way. 3 ADSs are also going to be in Cigar Shop, not stacked in that particular way. The thing here is they don't want this deployable shield to be removed without Smoke being able to take a few lives and lots of utility with them. I cannot stress this enough. This area here is where SSG are essentially turning Kafe into blue server stairs of bank, and it's by using those gas canisters early in order to stall out the default pushes that a lot of teams have leaned on in order to take into Kafe. And that's also just going to be even more difficult given the fact that Team Reciprocity has decided to ban the Thatcher. Let me also just draw the jammers underneath each one of these castle barricades just to indicate the attackers aren't able to use breaching charges in order to remove these armor panels. There's horizontal soft destruction from piano into bar. What that lets you do is, as a defender, you can use washroom and then get a line of sight onto the default plants that are here and here. A good thing to open up, it does give a lot of strength to the rappel on the south piano window, since this, as you can see, we play with the angle, can go all the way into what I call heaven. But that doesn't really matter, considering that there is an armor panel that is matched with a mute jammer. Finally, we have our 2 reinforcements in Cocktail. That's just to give the position in heaven here, and then also Cocktail itself a little more strength and allow the anchors with ACOG. We will see Doc plays in this position in the entirety of the game in order to make peaks appropriately based on whether the attackers are in hell, this is hell to me, or peeking from Cigar Shop once Cigar Shop is lost. Everyone gets onto the roof and then they start going to work on the west barricade or armor panel. We see the castle runs out there but is immediately traded, or not really traded, but is immediately killed and punished. Let's point out something real quick. So in this frame, we have the IQ who is using that armor panel that was just removed in order to get lines of sight into piano. Well, I already told you that Rampy's underneath in Small Bakery getting ready to run out in order to get the kill onto her. Such a cheeky run out because it's so unexpected. And I don't know if it was designed. I feel like it was, rather than being a call that was made in order to get the trade. We just saw Smoke in his position by the Cigar Shop, playing with 3 ADSs and also a deployable shield. So there's the run out from Rampy out of Small Bakery, gets the kill onto the IQ who's on rappel. So we had Castle playing in Cigar Lounge. We have Smoke playing in Cigar Shop. We have Jaeger somewhere downstairs. We have Doc in Cocktail, and then I'm not really sure where Mute is. What happens is we lose the Castle in Cigar Lounge. So now this entire area of Cigar Lounge is neutral, and that allows the attackers to swing in, but more importantly, since it's not contested, we're going to see the Smoke be surprised when he dies from the armor panel. That sledge is going to open into Cigar Shop from behind. SSG needed to somehow pair the Smoke or replace the player in Cigar Lounge as quickly as the Castle dies in order for this player in Cigar Shop not to die. And that, I believe, was the purpose of this washroom rotate into white into Pixel, but it never comes from SSG. So Bosco, in his position, is expecting to hear the red drop. What he doesn't know is that they've already swung into Piano, and they get the easy frag with his back turned to them, simply because no one from SSG's side was covering him. It's probably Thinking Nate's responsibility, who is in Freezer. At the same time, it might be the case that Capitao flamed off that rotation, but I don't think so. I think we only saw a firebolt into the Cigar Shop area that would restrict Bosco from moving back towards the Skylight area, which he would still probably never do. Knock running around is never really a great idea. It undoes her ability, and then we have another frag and another frag with the attackers having so little map control actually established. But the execute onto the Smoke was pretty well done. They were lucky and got away with the fact that SSG never replaced the position in Piano, which quite obviously needs to be replaced. So nearly an identical lineup this time around from really both teams. The only change is instead of Doc, we have a Mozzie, which pairs well with the Mute. But we're still going to lean into this Mute and Castle combination. And then from Team Reciprocity, instead of Knock, we have Ying coming out. TR just don't need the IQ. One of the unintended consequences of a lineup like this from Team Reciprocity is, where is the barbed wire? So Mute doesn't have the option for barbed wire. Smoke, you're gonna bring the deployable shield 9 times out of 10. Castle definitely doesn't have any barbed wire, but Castle in some ways works as barbed wire, since you have to, punch through his barricade or open it up somehow, which makes a loud sound. Mozzie probably gonna bring the C4 because it's just better than barbed wire. And then Jaeger, there's an argument to be made that you want to bring the deployable camera, because that intel, that camera piece would really be the only camera that you would have in this lineup unless Mozzie hacks a drone. So speaking about that barbed wire, we have wire in the white corridor. This is just for an audio cue in case attackers were to push through the white hallway. Reinforcements on stacks, 2 of those, and then 2 reinforcements on the Cocktail Lounge, kind of in a split formation. These are both paired with Mute Jammers, which will make droning the tail area very difficult. There is also a armor panel on the tail side. That's just to give these defenders a more defensible position, because they also have the hatch opened in order to drop into laundry. I didn't write it down, but I'm pretty sure there has to be a Mute Jammer on the freezer wall into stacks. And then lastly, a deployable shield in tail in order to contest any push into, bar and tail, and to deny the vertical pressure onto site. Let's go down a level. So a reminder that the laundry room hatch is open. We also have a rotation from laundry into reading. This is very default. A reinforcement in order to give this position a little more gusto. A armor panel on the reading door. That's to stop a pillar rush. It's not uncommon to have a Smoke playing and reading all alone, holding both sites really by himself. and he needs some way to slow down the rush through the east rappel and into pillar. Therefore, 2 reinforcements on reading in order to give himself a little more of a defensible position, matched with a mute jammer that will make hard breaching into sight very difficult. What you might not see a whole lot of in your ranked games is horizontal lines of sight all through fireplace and reading room. So the idea here is that Smoke with his gas canisters can deny plant with these horizontal lines of sight, but also, if needed, a player from all the way in like pillars dropping from hell, which would be over here, could deny the plant with the same lines of sight. With any kind of split objective, which is what a fireplace and reading objective is, a lot of times you'll have defenders hold one site as their sort of primary site and then leave a less defensible site opened as much as possible. Think of kids on house, for instance. We also have a rotation on white stairs and then a reinforcement right next to it. I talked about this last week, but the reason why one wall is reinforced, one wall is soft, is you don't want to give angles to attackers from the top of stairs, but it's fine to give angles towards the bottom of stairs because it's easier for a defender to contest. Think of the room on Skyscraper. If you go into karaoke, a lot of times the back stairs, you will create a rotation, and that's because from the vantage point of sight, you have a very advantageous angle onto a attacker who would be pushing up those back stairs. The same ideas apply here, obviously. Last armor panel is going to be on the mining and museum entrance. This makes the room into mining somewhat of a box and doesn't allow an attacker to push through red stairs without making a loud noise. I'm sure this is paired with some kind of soft destruction along this wall. I just didn't catch it, but intuitively that's what makes sense to me. And then finally the reinforcement on train hatch, and that's to stop a rush into fireplace, making train a little more defensible for defenders. Into the action, we have Capitao, who, well, first of all, it's like a minute 30, and the attacks have done really nothing, well, other than that. But into the action, and we have a player on the east rappel trying to get these players off of tail, and then one on skylight. Smoke is doing as much as he can in order to delay the push. Eventually has to retreat once he's lost his teammate. I actually don't know how Smoke gets away with his life. I also don't understand where Team Reciprocity used the Candelas, because I didn't see any on tail. But now the attackers have vertical control. Largely the push came from the rappels into piano. But they're really starved for time here. As long as Spacestation don't peek, they should be in, I feel as though they're in a winning position, because there's not a ton of vertical destruction that would make you think otherwise. Especially with the positioning that both of these players are in. That smoke is actually a winning smoke, because that denies the smoke from being able to deny plant there. And then mute is tucked in the corner of reading. These post-plant positions from the attackers are really strong. They're outside. This Ying in no scenario should die. Maverick was the one who planted, so he's just sticking on top of the diffuser. We still have an attacker who's holding vertically. And finally, the attacker peeks into the building. Kind of a poor spectator round, since a lot of the action happened in the last minute 30. I would guess that the reason behind that is that Team Reciprocity just took the time to really drone out what tail looked like, because once they have that vertical control, they're able to start opening up vertically, which they didn't really do a whole lot of, but more importantly, they got 2 kills out of it. Same operator lineup from Reciprocity. They show the Amario because they're funny people. The IQ seriously is doing nothing for Rec, and I just wish it would be dropped. SSG are sidestepping the fact that Team Reciprocity are hard sticking to the IQ despite its uselessness here in terms of utility. We have a Mira in train as well as a reinforcement on the window. So let's talk about this. Well, let's first draw. We have this mirror window that gives us full visibility into everything that's happening inside of mining from the position of Train Museum. Obviously, the Train Museum hatch is going to have to be reinforced for a player to hold this position. The reason behind these reinforcements in particular are you don't want to give a line of sight from the window into, look at how much you can play around with this. And then this black window, this particular black window and the rotation next to it allows Mira to peek the window outside and then also have full control of mining as a whole. So a very strong Mira indeed. That is accompanied with a castle barricade and then horizontal soft destruction across the museum entrance hallway. We have white fully reinforced. You don't want a attacker to be able to vault into fireplace, then crouch walk through into train and then shoot the mirror behind the back. A rotation into reading room from pillars that just gives your roamers, if they were to drop from the third floor, or even just gives the roamers an extra way to move throughout the map that otherwise wouldn't exist. I am quite fond of it, especially on a mining and fireplace defense. There is a armor panel on white stairs that allows your defenders to retreat down from the third floor with a little more coverage in terms of utility. Then we have to turn our way to the third floor. They're going to reinforce the red drop. Because Reciprocity aren't bringing thermite, Reciprocity has been leaning heavily on repelling into piano, which completely circumvents these two reinforcements. Reinforcements on tail and also stacks, with the mirror window placed on stacks and horizontal lines of sight into cigar lounge or piano. The thing is that because of this black window, now we have a way to contest Team Reciprocity's entry in through piano. So what options do Team Reciprocity have? They can either breach into this red wall, which really doesn't make any sense to do, considering they're still going to run into the line of sight of the Mira playing from stacks. Or they're now kind of forced to push through the bar area, and in order to establish map control, they have this choke point of cigar shop. It's not like SSG are going to do anything with that. I missed it while I was doing the second floor, but you're seeing Mozzie reinforce the right or the north side reinforcement into that entrance hallway. With how other rounds played out, I'm pretty sure he's going to create some horizontal lines of sight that will allow them to contest a attacker pushing through this area as well. So while there is going to be a castle barricade on this door, the defenders have another way to punish an attacker who would so stupidly decide to try to push through this hallway, given the fact that there's also a black window looking at him. Legion is presumably being used in a way that replaces the job barbed wire would bring, maybe also just for the impacts. But as I mentioned, there's hardly any barbed wire from this defensive lineup. Legion, a very good operator for controlling stairs. Somewhat glad that I forgot to mention this particular armor panel. So what is the purpose of this armor panel? Well, let's establish that there will be a black window on the stack side, and that allows SSG to see the entirety of this piano push. How would the attackers respond to this black window if their strategy is through pushing into piano? The answer that I would come up with is I would try to, from the skylight, smoke into freezer, blocking the view of the Mira in order for me to orient myself into white hallway if that's important to me, or do whatever, right? I just want to get into piano because that is what we've practiced and that's what we're comfortable with. So this castle barricade, I'm pretty sure, is to deny any blocking of line of sight this mirror window is capable of seeing into piano from that skylight. The thing is, this window is still open, or door is still open. So I don't know if it does its job entirely, but I don't imagine that they're worried about a player pushing into freezer, considering there is indeed a mirror window that we're watching them. Despite it being their default entry given the bans, how many attackers do we have inside of piano right now? Well, the answer is absolutely 0, and that is because of this one black window in freezer. So 2 players on the west balcony. We have Ying on repel towards the pillar window, or I call it Macy J window. IQ's on red. We're at a minute. Hopefully there's a plan here, but it really doesn't seem like there's a great one. Rampy is going to be playing this really rat angle. Always smart to use any form of any kind of object in order to elevate yourself, because it makes your hitbox for your head more difficult to actually find. The round came down to the fact that Reciprocity never got into the building, really. I think they had 3 people still outside at a minute mark, and so without any map control, without any vertical pressure, very difficult to attack into fireplace and mining. The funny thing too is if they had only dropped red hatch and then pushed through bar, Reciprocity probably are able to remove the players that are situated in tail and then able to start working vertically and then go to a more default strategy, or their original strategy. But that didn't happen because Reciprocity have practiced repelling into piano, and that's the way that they want to do it, and they can't do that given there's a mirror window watching them try to repel into piano. So no adaptation from Reciprocity. We have the same operator lineup from SSG, except this time instead of, well, actually we've added a mute instead of a Mozzie, and then instead of Jaeger, we're bringing the Warden. The Warden is a direct counter to Ying. I don't think Ying has been very effective either. And I also question whether Maverick has done a whole lot. I think right now, Reciprocity would be better off bringing Habana in order to deal with the Mira. I mean, actually, in an ideal world, what operators would Reciprocity bring? Well, they would bring someone to deal with the castle barricades. That would be Zof, ideally. They would bring Habana in order to deal with the Mira. They would continue to have the Sledge because Sledge is good against Castle, and those are the 3 operators, I think I rattled off 3, that I would hard stick to. 3 reinforcements on tail. There's going to be the mirror window, I believe, also on tail. I've never actually seen this mirror window, but it's really good. It gives you entire coverage of bar, and even if a player, it's not uncommon for players to push through this freezer area in order to push into bar. Actually, not uncommon to see barbed wire where I drew the W. But cool little setup there. There's also going to be a deployable shield in tail, and that's just to give this position even more strength. As an attacker, I'm thinking there's no way I'm ever pushing this side, and this black window once again is going to be so difficult to remove on a second floor defense. And this position is no doubt paired with jammers, mute jammers that is, in order to make it more difficult to actually drone. We have the same wire on white. That's to stop any kind of flank. 2 reinforcements on stacks, and again, no doubt that there is a jammer in order to give that position more strength and deny any kind of hard breach. There's also that same castle armor panel on tail, giving this upstairs hold just a little more gusto. I think there's a armor panel on white stairs, although I don't have it written down. Then we go down a floor, foot level soft destruction across fireplace and reading. We already talked about why that is. Reinforcements on the pillar wall accompanied with a jammer to give that position more strength. An armor panel into reading, into pillars. And then a black window on laundry room. This is, of course, accompanied with a reinforcement and also your proverbial rotation between into sight. Lastly, we have the same white stairs reinforcement with a rotation that allows players to move between that area. Interesting Candela there. So Ying is flashing Warden, but then isn't pushing him or anything. Feels like a big waste of utility. It might actually be the case that they were just trying to burn ADSs and they don't realize, despite having an IQ, that there's no ADSs, because when you fuse or cluster charge the Candela, it sends out 6 projectiles, which would be enough to remove 3 ADSs if all of them are caught by each one of the ADSs. In any case, we have our attackers approaching the mirror window. And it looks like a player that ran out of the basement or garage, sorry. This deployable, so I think what's really interesting is the fact that Rampion, the Warden, is not really even playing behind the black window. It's really somewhat of a decoy and just there to waste time. Where he's really playing is behind this deployable shield. But this deployable shield and the angles that he gets with the cocktail table, if you will, that wooden table, allows him to, oh, and he's dropped actually down the hatch, but it allows him just to waste even more time. Boss or Canadian here on the smoke is in a really strong position. This corner fed angle is actually really difficult to clear, and it's not uncommon to get a kill if you stay here, despite the attackers thinking they've cleared the top. If he doesn't peek and just plays in this position, so strong. When he starts to wide out, he's really playing somewhat of a losing, or he's chasing a losing fight here, in my opinion at least. Like I doubt the IQ actually knew that smoke was still up there until he started widening out. Even here at the 30-second mark, it's a 3v5. You don't have any operator that can do any soft destruction, because I know Ying is bringing a claymore. Capital can't do anything. That's kind of just the theme of this attacking half for Team Reciprocity. They can't do anything because they're limited by the operators they're bringing. On a bar and cocktail defense, we're seeing the Goyo being brought out. Finally, we have the Echo. This is the first round. Need I remind you that IQ will be beneficial. What a strange decision to 6 from Habana onto Ying. The commitment to Ying, to me, is really baffling. It has not worked. I don't understand what they're trying to achieve with Ying. I mean, even pushing out the Warden in tail didn't do anything. We have 2 ADSs by the couches. There's going to be a rotation in washroom and then a reinforcement right next to it. And you would think that that'd be the end of that, except there's more. There's also going to be a deployable shield in the rotation. So those 2 ADSs prevent the deployable shield from being removed without burning said ADSs. 2 reinforcements on the freezer wall, and then 2 reinforcements on red wall as well. We have a reinforcement on the bar into piano wall with some horizontal lines of sight as well. The reason for this reinforcement, as I think I already talked about, is you don't want to let the repeller on the south side to get angles into bar. But you do want to be able to contest the default plant through this line of sight that you get from Pixel. We have a Vulcan shield in bar. That's somewhat, again, to contest the default plant. One on Pixel. No one's going to play behind that, but getting that Vulcan shield out of that position can be really difficult, especially with these ADSs that will catch any lethal utility thrown at it. And then lastly, a Vulcan shield on Skylight, and that just makes dropping down Skylight more risky. I mean, this is a really well thought out Vulcan shield, considering Capital has been on the Skylight, I think, 2 of the rounds now, and then late dropped. So that denies the ability for a player to kind of rush into the scene there. I think I might have the castle barricade wrong, and it might actually be into shop, but I can't remember. Yeah, so the armor panel is indeed between cigar and piano, and then we also have this armor panel on the wall that just makes removing a mute jammer more difficult. From this armor panel on the window rappel, you also can get a line of sight into Pixel somewhat. Armor panel on the piano window, we have our usual cigar shop armor panel, and then also one on white stairs. So look at this here. Only one of the walls on Freezer is actually reinforced because there's a smoke playing with a deployable shield in Freezer, and then he has this double line of sight that allows him to deny the cigar shop door entrance. There's a lot of deployable shield and horizontal lines of sight shenanigans going on in this setup. This is pretty advanced. I mean, this smoke, if you asked any ranked player to play in that position, they would say no because they feel too exposed. So Sledge is going to use a grenade in order to remove that armor panel. Doesn't really do a whole lot for the attack. What a shot from Rampy. Should not be able to get away with that, but he does. Whether Reciprocity know it or not, and it could be from the jammers, they do have permission to entry into cigar shop. They've finally taken it with the Ying. It's just that once they enter into piano, there are 3 defenders with deployable shields staring at them. To reiterate, there is a rotation and horizontal lines of sight on this back store wall with a reinforcement here. A deployable shield in Freezer with smoke playing in that position. And then while Washroom's reinforced, at this point I'm not really sure why they would reinforce this since they just cut off their players. There is an additional rotation on Washroom with a deployable shield. Not to mention there are ADSs in this area that make removing these deployable shields even more difficult. There's a mute playing in Washroom, and then a Goyo shield with a player playing in Pixel also. So we have 3 defenders holding down the cigar area with 3 shields and 2 ADSs. Nigh impossible to continue with a push through cigar because of the utility dedicated here and the manpower. I love how SSG have really embraced the idea that Smoke should use his utility as early as possible. It's often the case that Smoke players are grown to think that they need to save their gas canisters for the late round, but when you only have 20 seconds left and you barely have any control over the map, you're going to force the attackers to make some dumb decisions, which is definitely what it looks like is happening right now. Given the fact that, they're attempting a plant with 2 players. Can't stress how Reciprocity are really shooting themselves in the foot by not bringing a Zoe or some other kind of nades and flashes to pair to remove the ADSs that are protecting those deployable shields. It's also just kind of a commentary on the meta that Siege is in right now. Utility sap strategies are so effective. Mining defense, we have a rotation into Fireplace. It's kind of a useless one since you already have this pathway here. There might be a line of sight that I'm just not super familiar with that would make you want to create that rotation. It's always better to have a rotation closest to a wall that can't be shot through. But like I said, I don't really understand what angle they're worried about. Black window in the same train spot, and then you're going to reinforce this museum entrance window angle that you would get. The same castle barricade or armor panel, and then reinforcement towards the end of that museum entrance. Horizontal lines of sight 2 in order to contest that area, and then all of this is opened up, giving us a black window with lots of power over mining. Rotation pillars, and then in order to support the black window, we're going to obviously reinforce the hatch and train. I also wrote down armor on white stairs, but I've been wrong in the past. Let's go up a level. So black window on stacks, once again, reinforcement, obviously, lines of sight horizontally into Freezer, giving us control of Cigar Lounge. I wouldn't doubt that red would be reinforced, but I didn't write it down, so I'm not going to mark that. So based on the operators brought and the reinforcements, it's kind of a mirror from round 3. It'll be interesting to see how Team Reciprocity are able to adapt with somewhat of the same operators. They finally decided to go to Zofia, which I've been begging for, But as I mentioned, IQ really quite useless. It might almost be worth bringing a Montaigne just so that they can push through the black windows too. That's another answer to the problems, potentially. So 2 reinforcements on tail, I didn't mention those. But I did mention how it's probably going to be a Mira of the second, as I say Mira, of the third round. So getting the sledge off of the rappel there is great because you're removing the one operator who is best for creating lots of vertical destruction. Very important. We have a nice little staring contest here. I like how Rampy, I don't know why Rampy would be in kitchen cooking, but he was. He obviously has a call from faults in this position and is going for the flank. But it doesn't matter because Fox A needs to initiate something since they are down in the attacking side as well. At a 3-3 though, we have, or Team Reciprocity has control of reading and really control of pillars. They've also removed all the roamers up top because Laxing's there. And so we have Bosco in sight trying to hold down the fort. Without any pressure into sight created from the attackers, not a whole lot is going to come of this attack. And yeah, I mean, this is turning out to be somewhat of a terrible video, if only for the fact that Team Reciprocity not changing a whole lot, and they're also pushing just too late and too ineffectively. Interesting that for SSG, they never went to a bakery defense. Team Reciprocity, they decide to open up with bakery, bringing out the bandit in order to trick the wall. Very possible, given that there's no Thatcher, and SSG aren't bringing a Maverick in their lineup. Then we have tons of intel for Team Reciprocity, which is all countered by IQ. SSG choose Nomad over Gridlock. I personally think that Gridlock's more effective at her job on Kafe, just because Nomad's really good for runouts. Well, I guess SSG don't really have the foresight into knowing that they're going to go on a bakery defense, which is less runout heavy than, say, the top floor, since you're on repels for so long. But Nomad, generally, I think is a little weaker than Gridlock on Kafe, just because Kafe can be you can maintain the control that you have vertically through Gridlock's track stingers a lot more effectively than you can with Nomad, in my opinion. Thermite being brought out, that's a new one too, but thank you SSG. And then Zoe and Buck, because we need soft breach. So reinforcements, we're gonna have 2 on prep, 2 on bakery, 1 on the red wall with a rotate back into sight, and then 2 on freezer, freezer hatched reinforced with a reinforcement on the connecting wall of kitchen service and kitchen cooking. This all very default. This rotation that we have here probably means that there's gonna be a roamer on one of the floors above. I'm not a huge fan of rotations, or I'm not a huge fan of this particular rotation on site for kitchen cooking, at least not yet. You can't really treat it like SSG's basement hold on Clubhouse because there's only 1 hatch to drop, which SSG have decided to reinforce. So to me, what doing this defensively is really doing is just creating more pressure into sight for the attackers to use. That's really unnecessary. Like the distance between going from here to here is so minimal, and the line of sight that an attacker would hold in order to cut off this rotation is the exact same. To me, just not a rotation worth creating. Because no one's playing in bakery from Team Reciprocity, they're not reinforcing any one of these bakery walls. That's just kind of a give me then for bakery control. Thermite's opening up prep, and that means that no player should really be able to play on the prep window, which is a lot of control to be giving up. So Buck, all the way in Cigar Lounge, is able to remove the bandit charges on bakery wall. Back in OGA Pit, one of the reasons why I thought MIBR and Liquid did so well, but particular Liquid is because they were both so acclimated to the Thatcher bans, and they were the ones bringing out Thatcher bans against North American teams, as well as EU teams who were less accustomed to them. And one of the really innovative ways that I saw Liquid handle a problem with the Thatcher ban, and also a Mav ban, is they went to the 3rd floor and Ash charged twice down onto Bakery with that same vertical line of sight that we just saw SSG use. So good use of homework and preparation here from SSG. And innovation too. Well, the wall on Bakery is open. Tons of pressure into sight. I mean, if you look at where the silhouettes of the defenders are, they've all receded into the backs of I believe that's called service instead of cooking, which is not good for the defenders because it means that Canadian can just worm his way into a plant. So Laxing gets a frag onto Canadian, most likely from, I'm going to guess, red stairs, but then goes for a really long rotate as the attackers continue to push into sight. With Laxing at the top of red stairs on the 3rd floor, just playing way too out of position, trying to be too cheeky with the big rotations. He got a kill on the flank, but then he didn't continue to help alleviate the pressure onto site. And so his teammates ultimately all die because they're playing a 1v3. Mute will be a nuisance for SSG. We'll just have to see how they deal with the utility that Reciprocity are bringing, particularly the hard breach denial utility. Red reinforced, bar reinforced, freezer reinforced, washroom reinforced, a rotation in washroom, rotation stacks, this reinforcement on stacks, and then a reinforcement on tail. None of this stuff is all that surprising. A Vulcan in Cigar, a Vulcan in Bar for default, and a Vulcan underneath Skylight. We've seen both these Vulcans used by SSG. At a minute 30, we're finally breaching into Piano. It's pretty slow. Can really feel the effects of the Thatcher ban. And I guess I should mention that I don't think that attacking slow and methodically is bad, as much as it's just a matter of, actually I recommend it in most cases. I think rotating is something that more players should do. The problem is, if you only have 50 seconds left and no map control, at some point you're going to have to stop droning and just start dry peeking everything as an attacker. So we're breaching into Freezer to remove any players that could play in that position. This enables a default plant to some extent. Still need to worry about a player just sitting in Freezer because they can do that even from default plant and peek the player. Also, the player in washroom is a threat too because he also denies default plant. So look, what a great view. I wish we saw this more from the spectator. So this player in washroom can, if Thermite had been planting here, could deny plant. This Legion also has a line of sight onto Thermite when he starts to move out. Canadian planted in like the best place to plant given this scenario, but any one of, well, actually Mute, what Mute's going to do is just throw a C4 into where he thinks default plant would be, and that will be enough to deny the plant and actually win the round. No lives are even lost at 6 seconds, which is really crazy. Does anyone even die? I don't think anyone will die during this round. Okay, so one player will die. And so that's actually from the Legion. The Legion playing this angle here is going to net a kill. So yeah, the hard breach denial, big obstacle for SSG. They didn't really have a plan around it. They went through it. It just took tons of time. And then once they were out of time, they didn't have the time to drone the positions of the player in Freezer and Washroom. They weren't able to coordinate a push to get them out of those positions either. And ultimately, they weren't able to get the plant down. From Team Reciprocity, the 6 on to the Mute from the Clash, we have Canadian going to Habana. Now, why is he doing that? This is And this is really smart because on a reading and fireplace defense, you normally don't need to thermite really anything. You're going to be opening up the hatches above and then also lines of sight into tail in order to get that vertical control, or establish some vertical pressure and then get vertical control. So really good use of operator selection from SSG. On the third floor, we have reinforcements on tail and they're split. Also 2 reinforcements on stack. You know, kind of into the habit of these 4 reinforcements at this point. There's barbed wire on white, a jammer on white. I love the jammer that's in this corner. It denies droning through the white door, obviously. I won't be covering the first floor, the second floor, because it's really no different than what SSG would reinforce. But I will mention that there's a pixel Vulcan shield, and then I don't know if they're memeing, honestly, they could be, but 2 Vulcan shields behind one another, and then an actual deployable shield on tail. So that's 3 deployable shields on this tail area, and I mean, it works for them. They win the round, but just kind of goofy. So here's a great drone that lets us see the maze of deployable shields that Team Reciprocity have built for us. Trading a nade for a deployable shield in this meta is worth it, unfortunately, for the attackers. Habana is opening up tail, and so that should force the player in that position out. We didn't see this from Team Reciprocity either, which is just opening into freezer and then getting the stacks wall opened. That effectively should force the defenders off of the first floor. What a cool smoke. So right here is a gas canister that's being thrown from below. Very cool from Team Reciprocity to use smoke in such a creative way vertically. And so as you can see, SSG at 45 seconds are only now being able to open up vertically and apply pressure onto players in sight. Bucks also maybe starved for the number of shots he has with that shotgun, just because he used it to open into freezer. Nomad is finally setting up flanks at 23 seconds. And so SSG here are just going to start face checking everything. Like this player in that narrow angle, playing a very strong position. It's one of the last angles that you can possibly check in a room. Going to be able to get away with something there. Doesn't, because thinking age is better. But you know, normally that would be droned out. A ping on the player would be enough to kill them, or a flash grenade and they'd be dead. Even Fultz, I think, 3 seconds left. He's potatoing. Fultz, as we'll talk about later, one of the best entries in the game right now. And as you can see, at the end of the round, the comms are probably so sloppy that despite the fact that this player here will be downed and the only remaining player is here on the defense, Team Reciprocity are going to win the round just because SSG are so rushed to actually execute anything onto site. Team Reciprocity did what they needed to do, which was down the planner. So good on them. This last round is just a really cool take from the attacks. We'll break that down instead of the reinforcements from Team Reciprocity on a fireplace and mining defense.
7 in a row to win, then it probably would have been a 5-0. I believe that's what it was. It was a 5-0. Either way, I'm sure someone will look that up, but I'm pretty sure that was the setup there. Fultz just rotating back out. They're trying to do whatever they can here to move a little more swiftly, but these rotates cost time as well. Of course, Zofia is not a 3-speed like Ash, who was banned by Spacestation. But they need the Zofia, something the Reciprocity lacked many of the rounds and could have benefited from. Spacestation, seeing the amount of shields that Reciprocity are bringing, definitely need it. And they're continuing to bring it. I almost wonder if they might have wanted to go with a sledge instead of the Nomad just to have the extra grenade redundancy for the amount of utility they're clearing. The air jabs don't seem to be doing a ton of work. However, Retro making up for some of the previous losses. Takes down Bosco early, and killing Bosco early, always a great thing if you can, but Retro does get traded. However, Nyx fights one back on Rampy. And then back and forth, Nyx gets traded. Fultz, though, finally bringing the lead in Space Station's favor, and then followed up by Thinking Nade onto Vertical. It's all on Fox, who now gives his position away, but does a little bit of damage to Fultz. That should have been a lot more damage, honestly.
How does that even happen? Did she do a lot more damage with TCSG? Did he shoot the Zofia in the rear end?
Might have just been like in the feet, you know, partway through. I don't know, it's hard to say.
There's the Nitro. There's nobody on the other end for this call. Fox is on his own. This round is as good as done for the retake, though.
Air jab being used on Cigar Shop. This stops the flank down red, so they know that that section of the map is covered. Then let's talk about the repel. So we have a player on Macy window. This player is able to really control like everything. There's the thermite planting in mining after they get the kill onto museum. When he flashes the hallway, that's just because it's the only area that he can really get pushed by, considering that he has his teammate on Macy window, who's able to hold down that area as well from that repel. And then, like, what other aspects of this hold would you need? Probably just a player in mining window holding the double door of train in order to stop any rotation, and then probably someone just holding the bottom of red stairs so that no one can flank up red stairs, and you know that no one can flank down red stairs. Buck and Nomad at one point are both in pillar or something similar to that, but as you can see, really, so 1, 2 planner, 3 players required for this kind of take, and once they get the kill on the player in train, there's no one holding in the vicinity of the plant in the adjacent room because they've already cleared out the hallway of museum entrance. So just a cool take from SSG. I guess it's important to mention that Bosco does die on the mining window, and they actually don't have a player who's playing lower red. But I'm going to guess that there is an air jab on lower red, as there is one on upper red. And the player dying on mining window should have probably been replaced by Rampy instead of pushing into pillars, which is what he did with Thinking Aid. All in all, though, SSG win 7-3 on Kafe, 5 attacking rounds, which is incredible given the Thatcher ban. Instead of talking about the specific playday and the stats behind that, I wanted to actually look at the season. One of the stats that jumps out to me is the KD of Fultz on attack. He's currently at a 4.8. I don't know if that number is actually correct, but I can tell you it's at least above a 4, which is a ridiculous KD to have. I don't think that there's a better entry in Siege than Fultz right now. Another one that we've talked about in the past is Thinking Aid and the dash with advantage metric. That's sitting at a 50%. It's very, very high. It's countered with, kills with disadvantage. But the 50% is very, very high. Great game from SSG, if not through the gameplay, but just strategically in what operators they brought. And take care.